Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for my proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2022-2023. This is my ninth and my final budget as your mayor, and it is my 23rd budget as an elected official here at City Hall. This general fund budget of $11.8 million, together with our proprietary budgets, which surpass collectively $30 billion, represent our promise to the people of Los Angeles to make sure your tax dollars are spent well and focused on the challenges that confront you every single day and the services that you depend on. And it also is always a reflection of our city's core values, building on the commitment to equity in last year's justice budget and pursuing the back to basics agenda that I've tried to push forward since I've been your mayor since 2013. It also reflects strong economic recovery. The city of the top 5 metro areas in America that has the most robust economic recovery, the most jobs added, the highest valuations of publicly traded companies, and the expectation that we'll continue that momentum that really Angelenos have produced with their resilience and with the economy that is here in Los Angeles. And this budget also mirrors the approach that I've tried to take to governing Los Angeles, making sure we address the immediate challenges in front of us, but looking backwards from 10 years from now about the right decisions for long-term investments to build a city of the future and a strong economy that has justice for everyone. Let me start with a broad overview of the budget, and then we'll begin digging into 4 key areas, and I'm happy to answer questions after that. So first, as I've said, we've made an incredibly strong economic recovery. This is good news. Better than good, it's great news. Our finances are in a very different place than just 2 years ago when we faced down the toughest economic moment of our lives. And our revised revenue estimates for this fiscal year are projected to show an over 8% growth from where we were in the depths of the pandemic. We're projecting a revenue estimate of $7.4 billion in this budget. That represents a 6.6% growth from last year, not including the American Rescue Plan dollars that were a one-off for the fiscal year of 2021-22. And on the matter of reserves, I think all of you know that I've really pushed hard on something that never makes any headlines. It certainly doesn't get you political points, but is the most prudent and important thing you can do in a budget, to put reserve funds away. We saw the importance of that in the pandemic when we could draw from those to stand up testing centers and vaccination sites, to buy PPE for our hospitals and so much more. But we set aside $658 million in cumulative reserves in this budget. That's the highest number in our city's history. The idea here is to set the next administration up, for the next mayor, for him or for her to make sure that they're prepared for an emergency and that our city can withstand anything that we face. The reserves that we had built up before the pandemic are what saved us, prevented us from having to cut more services, lay off city employees. And we know it's not a matter of if. Unfortunately, in Los Angeles, it's a matter of when. The challenges that we face here, next big earthquake or next highly contagious virus, we need to be ready for what's ahead. That's been one guiding principle for me since day one, which is why our cumulative reserves in this proposed budget are $300 million more than when I took office. So that's some of the very big picture overview, but now let's dig into some of the details. And let's start with our biggest challenge and our most important crisis, that of homelessness. We aren't just meeting last year's historic investment, we're going to exceed it by nearly $200 million. And $1.16 billion is going to keep the momentum that we've gained on our streets. This will be our largest investment in this crisis. As I said in our State of the City, we have doubled our homelessness budget 5 times. And if you look at the $10 million where we started and the $1.16 billion here, it's more than 20 times the homelessness budget when we took office in 2013. This budget funds the creation of 3,700 new permanent supportive housing units, including $331 million in Prop HHH, building 2,200 of those units. It includes $255 million from the state for a new round of Project Homekey, which will add 928 more permanent homes. This is also a budget, as I said in my State of the City, designed to deliver a cleaner city. We're planning to hire nearly 800 sanitation workers, including 200 positions through Californians for All Youth Workforce Development Grant, bringing the total to 300 committed, great young Angelenos who are earning a paycheck and cleaning up our streets. By doubling the number of teams that are dedicated to bulky item pickup and illegal dumping in our high-density multifamily neighborhoods, we'll be able to improve how our streets look, reduce the response time for your requests, and make sure that that goes down from 7 to 3 days or less. And with continued funding, our 23 Care Plus teams will continue to provide services around our bridge home sites in every single council district, as well as focused service zones including downtown, Skid Row, and Venice. Next up, public safety, a safer city. This is an issue that's top of mind for many Angelenos right now. One of the many ripple effects of the COVID-19 pandemic was an uptick in crime rates across the country and certainly here in Los Angeles. Our city is still safer than it was in years past, far safer than it was a generation ago. But that doesn't change the fact that every crime casts a long shadow on anybody who has been a victim. So how will we get to an even safer city? Well, this budget includes an 8% increase in Los Angeles Police Department budget, a nearly 30% increase in our investment in other proven public safety alternatives, from our gang reduction and youth development programs to our mental health response vans. So what does this mean inside the department? It means that we will hire 780 sworn officers, bringing our total to 9,735 by year's end. And as I've always said, don't just fixate on the number of officers. What's more important to you than the number of officers on the force is the number of deployments, how many hours we have police officers patrolling. So we're going to increase sworn officers overtime, increase patrol hours, nearly 360,000 hours, to ensure that staffing is available when hiring ramps up. So you'll have the equivalent of a bigger department even as we're doing that hiring. It means additional funding to bring $37 million in total budget to our award-winning gang reduction and youth development department, a big increase of peacemakers who sometimes get between the bullets, get between the conflicts, and are able to breathe hope back into our most vulnerable communities. And Summer Nightlights is coming back and coming back with strength. It reduces crime in those important summer months. We're going to surge those programs that had to be cut during the pandemic, not cut necessarily just by the budget, but because we couldn't see each other in person. And we'll have that programming from sports to cultural programming, arts, and community things for the entire family, including meals throughout the summer. And we're expanding our mental health response program, which is already sending vans out 24/7 with city drivers and city real estate and great county clinicians and people with lived experience to provide critically needed psychiatric care to people suffering on our streets. Instead of taking firefighters and police officers off of the streets for hours sometimes to address mental health patients, something that most police officers and firefighters aren't specialists in, even if they do an admirable job trying, we give people suffering the help that they need with this program, taking them to either treatment right there on the street or programs instead of hospitals with no mental health programs where they only get returned to the street. This has the capacity to answer 9,000 of these mental health calls that so traumatize the people on the streets and often other Angelenos by year's end. This budget also includes $8 million to expand the crisis and incident response through community-led engagement, or CIRCLE programs, that we've already started in Hollywood and Venice. This diverts 911 calls dealing with people who are unhoused away from law enforcement, and instead mental health experts, people who themselves have been unhoused, and other crisis workers who have lived on the streets themselves and established long-term trusting relationships interact with those individuals. And finally, on the public safety front, we are going to add 4 academy classes at the fire department to reduce the number of field vacancies. And we're starting out the new fiscal year not just with a new leader at LAFD, Chief Crowley, but with a new bureau as well that we're funding in this budget. The Diversity and Equity Inclusion Bureau will be charged with mediating conflicts, putting a strategic diversity and inclusion plan in place, among other things. And finally, this budget, as I talked about in the end of my State of the City address, invests in addressing climate change in both the immediate and the long term. As I announced last week, it includes a 2-phase, $21 million climate equity fund that will focus mitigation and resilience efforts in our lowest income communities. In other words, those frontline communities that are dealing with climate change and pollution in the worst conditions will get the first help in this budget. It'll hire and train underrepresented and displaced workers to retrofit community-serving buildings for energy efficiency. It'll distribute air purifiers directly to the residents of Los Angeles and neighborhoods that take on the most pollution because of their proximity to the port or the freeways. It will provide new insulation and cool roofs for low-income Angelenos on us. And will double our current investment in cool pavements to $4 million, invest $2 million in further tree planting, and put $3.4 million into our expansion of electric vehicle infrastructure across our city. This budget is prudent but progressive. It is bold but balanced. And that is what we've tried to accomplish here, to make sure we do the right thing while we're doing the right things. We're addressing the immediate needs to make our city safer and cleaner, grappling with our biggest and most long-term problems of homelessness and climate change. And I'm setting the stage for the next mayor. I was lucky enough to inherit this office from great mayors who came before and who thought through handing that baton in a very thoughtful way. We're trying to do the same thing here so that our work won't miss a beat. If anything, it can accelerate in the years ahead, and Los Angeles can continue to be a city of belonging, of freedom, and creativity. With that, let me say a couple things in Spanish, and then I'll be happy to answer questions. Oh, you know what? If somebody can grab my iPad. The Spanish is there. It says Spanish talking points, but they're not in the book. No problem. Why don't I start answering some questions, and I'll come back to the Spanish. Yes, Dave. Hi.
You said you're trying to get back to 97-35 in terms of police staffing, but it looks just from the numbers, that was the goal this year was 97-06. Yeah. And every month the number is decreasing, not increasing. Do you think it's realistic to think that you can get to that number, knowing that hiring is extremely difficult, recruitment is down, and it looks like a lot of departments actually are struggling to hire.
And that's not just in the public sector, too. I am, Dave, confident that we can, and I'll tell you why. We've increased our recruitment budget by 50%. I've personally been very involved in the weeds between our personnel department and our police department to look at what are the hiccups or the road bumps that cause it to take so long for background checks and other things, and we're already seeing those metrics come down. Faster background checks, more people assigned to that, which we didn't have this year. And we're also making sure, I just went to a graduating class, it was 55 2 Fridays ago. We need to be about 63 per class, so we don't need much of an increase. We've got a huge waiting list. We've got a lot of people who want to become police officers. It was amazing as I walked through and did the inspection of those lines, how many of them were native to the city of Los Angeles, especially the San Fernando Valley, for what it's worth. There was probably a majority of our police officers actually grew up in the city of LA. So we're working on also housing. You might have read about our initiative to look at incentives to help recruits potentially be able to have affordable rental housing in the first couple of years as they join the academy and join the force. So I'm confident we can get there. That's point number one. But point number two is that, remember, we always fixate on the number. And I think for somebody, they want to know how many hours of patrol they have, period. So as long as there's willingness, and there is, we've seen in this force willingness to take overtime, to be able to go on additional shifts, that means that you will have the equivalent at the beginning of the year of, I think, about 175 full-time equivalents above what we're at, just because of the amount of hours that we'll put in through overtime. So we're addressing that by making sure until we hire that higher number at the end of the year, you'll have the equivalent of that during the year.
Is there, is there a hiring crisis in the city? It looked to me like, please tell me if I'm wrong, you were talking about 800 sanitation workers. How many of those are vacant positions this year versus next?
The 268 are vacant. The balance is folks that will be additional. I think I wouldn't call it a crisis. I would say it's a challenge for all employers right now, but it's a great time to join the city. It's a great time to join a job with a purpose. It's a great time for people who are mission driven, as we're seeing this new generation. We've worked with the personnel department to really change how we communicate what it means to serve in the city. I've done it for 22 years almost, or 21 years almost. And it can be incredibly fulfilling to be able to have that, to wake up. I talk to city employees every single day. In the past, it was, hey, you get a pension and good benefits. That's less resonant right now with a newer generation. It will be eventually when they retire, but in the shorter term, we're finding that if you kind of emphasize the mission that is out there, we can get those hires. So I don't call it a crisis at all. I would say it's a challenge, but I'm confident that we can meet it.
And what are the causes for all these vacancies in particular fire department?
I think it's across our economy right now. I think there's just a worker shortage. I think part of it is also the demographics of how many births there were and people that are coming into the job market right now, and a lot of early retirements in the economy, and the city is also part of that. A lot of people reported early on that it was people in their 20s, like not wanting to work. And the evidence doesn't really show that. It's more people in the 50s and 60s who are retiring a little early saying, okay, I'm done with work. After 2 years of this pandemic, I'm going to do something else or not work at all or take their retirements early. So I think it's not disproportionate with the city. In fact, I think we are in a better place than a lot of private sector employers right now that are really, really struggling to find folks. But I think it's common across the society right now.
And you say, is that the same, the reasons that the fire department find vacancies, or what's going on there?
No, we always actually, I doubt we will ever in our lives have trouble hiring firefighters. We always have sometimes 50 to 100 candidates per position. So we've got a great list there always. People want to become firefighters. Many, many, many more want to become firefighters than there are positions. But we're seeing again, that demographic bubble. And this is not police, fire specifically. It's across all city departments. There's a disproportionate amount of people who are eligible for retirement right now. I don't know if it's like baby boomers or if it's the baby boomer echo or whatever, but there are folks that are getting ready and we want to be prepared and make sure we don't miss a beat.
Can you talk about police overtime and why that's going up so significantly?
To have coverage in our communities.
I guess the question is, would overtime be as high if some of those positions are filled? Is overtime higher because you don't want to do more banking?
No, I think there's more honest accounting. And certainly in the 20 years that I've been here, there's much more honest accounting. It used to be, here's the overtime budget. Police used to always bust through that, as you know, and then the council would adjust later on. So one of the things I've tried to do is have much more honest accounting. That's a piece of it, but not the main one. The main one is coverage and making sure that at a depleted department, we need to have the same amount of or more patrol hours, full stop.
So it is related to some of the vacant positions?
Oh, sure, of course. But it's also, since I've been mayor, I mean, we peaked, went down a little bit, and this may restore it, so I have to double check these numbers. I know we peaked a couple years ago at about 1 million more patrol hours than when I started as mayor. I think it had gone down to 600,000-700,000. This may restore it to about that 1 million more hours a year. And that's really important. That means that your calls, you know, the number one complaint people say is, God, it took 2 hours for a police officer to get there. It's not because our police officers aren't incredible and committed. It's because they're short-staffed. When we can add more patrol hours, that helps bring those response times down and can cover more of the city.
Please help us understand this.
Yes.
What's new with the idea?
In general, or with me? Nothing, just, you know, keep calm and carry on. I've been continuing to have great consultations with folks in Washington, D.C., but I've been very focused on this budget, on the state of the city, and Congress has been out of session, so no new update.
Have you or your staff looked into this on the ground, please, for this report?
I have not. I'd have to check with my staff. I have not.
You haven't?
No, I have not.
What's going on with pensions? In the new budget?
What do you mean, more specifically? I mean, we're continuing to, what's the percentage of pension? I know I have a good graph for you of we've gone down the percentage that we pay of the city budget. Let me see if I have, oh, here it goes, last tab here. So the general fund contribution is going down by 24 million. That's further good news. The net general fund contribution to the fire and police pension is decreasing by 54 million from 721 last year to 667. That's due to a decrease in covered payroll and a slight decrease in the contribution rate. And in LACERS, it's going up a little, 30 million, due to primarily increased positions in the budget that we've hired more people. But if you net that together, it's down 24 million.
And is that the second year that fire and police pensions have gone down?
I'd have to check for you. Is it? Yeah. Yeah. Matt Zabos says yes, so I'm going to say yes with confidence. And by the way, I know I mentioned that the overall reserves are the highest in our history. I also, as I said, I think in the state of the city, you know, when we started here, for some of the financial reporters or Times or anybody else, our credit ratings were in Moody's, it was AA2, actually Standard & Poor's was AA-, Fitch was AA-. We're now at AAA with Fitch, Kroll is AA+. They've all gone up, which is a reflection, even in tough fiscal times, of the management of this city and the budget that we put forward. So there's no stronger indicator in my mind, because it's not somebody promoting themselves. This is hard, cold facts from Wall Street, looking at the budget and analyzing those things like the pensions.
One thing I guess I would wonder in terms of the reserve, I understand you say that you want to kind of leave something for the next mayor, but there is obviously like a number of locations that have, you know, still serious issues with folks who are not getting housed. And, you know, why wouldn't we draw down the reserve to try and get even more beds, you know, whether it's tiny homes or hungry shelter or whatever you think is, you know, the best strategy. Why would we draw down the reserve to focus more aggressively on that? I know you're kind of.
Well, we did. You know, we could have put even more into the reserve fund, but we did prioritize and expanded by a couple $100 million what we wanted to put into homelessness. We'll be heading, big city mayors will be heading up to Sacramento, I think, on Monday. And we hope that HAP dollars will also come back in there. The state has tens of billions of dollars in surplus. We had a gap we had to close. And it's just simply irresponsible. You don't know what's going to hit. You don't know what emergency. If the last 2 years underscored anything, it's that you need to have prudent reserves there. The council, though, can take a look at that, and as they always do, can shave, can add if more revenues come in, et cetera, to any of those line items, and I'd welcome that.
What do you think about spending by Caruso?
I don't have any comment on that mayor's race, but it's fun to watch.
No comment? You know, any thoughts on somebody just?
I'm here for a budget briefing. What are your thoughts?
A lot of money.
It is a lot of money, for sure.
To go back to the Senator Grass investigation.
And then I can do Spanish right after. Yeah, go ahead.
Why not speak to them or reach out to them? Is it something that you don't want to talk to them?
No, you just asked me if I had them. I said no, I haven't.
I mean, have they reached out to you to talk?
I haven't directly been reached out to yet, no, that I know.
Are you hoping to talk to them?
I know that the truth and the information has been crystal clear since the beginning, so I welcome anybody looking deeply into that and being able to see, as I've always said, crystal clear behavior that I never saw. If I had, I would have put a stop to it. Full stop. I'm confident of that.
Because the Senate is on a knife's edge on almost any issue, let alone your nomination, if for some reason the votes aren't there, what would you see the next 7 months of being mayor like?
Every day that I get to be mayor is like finding a $100 bill in your pocket that you didn't know was there. It is a gift. I've enjoyed it. This has been some of the most meaningful, some of the most impactful work I've done in 21 years. No BS. I mean, I've gotten to go to New Mexico and see the largest wind farm in hemispheric history open up. I've been able to sign in this room an end to oil and gas drilling. I've been able to put forward a budget which is the strongest in 2 decades of being here. I'm going to see that bridge finished. We just rode yesterday on a train that took us from Bunker Hill right here to the old LA Times building. I know, shed a tear, but the old LA Times building. That was amazing to see. Those are, to me, this will be the best job I ever have in my life. Every single day I have an extra day doing that is a great day. All right, in Spanish. Muy buenos días y gracias por acompañarme a presentar el presupuesto de este año fiscal de 11.8 mil millones de dólares. Este es mi novena y final presupuesto como su alcalde. Refleja los valores fundamentales de esta ciudad y nuestra fuerte recuperación económica de la pandemia. Este presupuesto incluye 1.1 mil millones de dólares para luchar contra el desamparo, mucho más que la inversión histórica en el año pasado. Tiene fondos que contratar a casi 800 trabajadores de saneamiento y más. Y para expandir nuestro departamento de reducción de pandillas y desarrollo juvenil llamado GRID. Este presupuesto también duplica nuestra inversión en pavimentos frescos a 4 millones de dólares e invierte en la plantación de árboles en vecindarios con baja cobertura. Con este presupuesto estamos abordando las necesidades inmediatas para hacer que nuestra ciudad sea más limpia y más segura, y afrontando a nuestros problemas más grandes, desde el desamparo hasta el cambio climático. También estamos preparando el escenario para el próximo alcalde de esta ciudad, o alcaldesa, para seguir el progreso que hemos hecho y encontrando nuevas maneras para hacer Los Ángeles más justo y sostenible. Tengo mucho orgullo de este presupuesto. Yo quiero dar mis gracias al equipo que ha construido este presupuesto. Y también es muy importante para recordar que estas inversiones no son números en la página, pero son inversiones en la gente, en los humanos de Los Ángeles. Es prudente, pero progresivo. Es equilibrado, pero audaz también. All right, and with that, I want to thank our budget team. Yeah, you don't get to like stand up and like get a round of applause, but I'm going to give you one. And thank you to our deputy mayor, CAO for the help, and now it's in your hands as well. And in the words, the 22nd budget, in the words of Taylor Swift, I'm feeling 22. So thank you all so much. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for coming by.